Alright, hello and welcome to the second part of the tutorial on how to send a mesh from Blender to Giant's Engine. I will show you all the necessary steps to export it and how to set up most of the things, if not all, obviously. So yeah, let's just start. So this mod right here is my mulcher that I did, and it is basically straight out how I would have modeled it. So there's still like all sorts of meshes with different textures. There's some decals here, and there's also a couple of screw decals right here that you can see, which are using the standard data from the main folder, so from the data folder. So first of all, I'm not going to worry about the meshes, and I am first of all simply going to attach everything that belongs together and I will also just do a first test export. Alright, so let's check everything out. So in the decals there we have one decal and another one, and there's another one, and there's one as well. So I will merge these first of all together, and this is just my base decals that I'm going to call mulcher decals, and this is attacher decals. So why am I doing these as separate items? This is because those ones later obviously will move, and this one will still be attached to the attacher itself, so this one will not move. So this is why they're separated. So then I have all sorts of washers right here, which I'm also going to merge depending on where they go. So let me simply merge those together. So those four are called washers attacher, and the rest obviously we simply call washers mulcher. I'm sorry for the loud typing, by the way. This is the best I could do with setting up my microphone. Alright, so we have these attached, or joined, so we can set up the materials. So let's call them lizard, HTLM 300 washers. And we can also start setting up the materials. So you can see that it's already set to color mask here. So they're already set up for the shader. Let's just make sure, since I want them to be silver scratched, that they're also in the correct window. So they are not. So in the correct UDIM. So I have to move them one up, because one up is the so this here is silver scratched according to the UDIM. Right, so they're done, so I can just disable them for now. Right, so now I have to check what is going to be rotating here and what is going to be moving here. So I know that this one is going to move on itself or rotate, so I'm just going to call this back drum, and those ones I'm going to merge as well. They're already parented, which is good, so I can simply call them drum. Right, so this is going to move, so this is done. So just make a new collection. Let's call it merged. That I can simply hide. So for these warning signs, I want them to be able to be shown or not shown. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to attach everything that's going to be hidden later on. So I'm going to merge this together, apply the location so that it's on 0, 0. I'm going to call this warning signs. Let's just see. Oh, there's some I missed. So these two screws I missed, so they go in as well. Right, nice. So they can go to merged. Now I have to merge everything that is part of the attacher, so now I can actually see what is part. So this is going to be merged, this and this. And now I also have to make sure that I still have some parts like these. Oh, sorry. I can just disable the normal size. Oh, give me 1 second. Okay, I'm back. So, as I wanted to say, there's still some parts here that I have mirrored. So before I export them, I want to make sure that I collapse these. So I'm just going to basically select all. And if you have the modifier list add-on, there's an add-on or a button here that's called apply all modifiers. So you can just select all and then just apply all modifiers. So you're done now. So there's no modifiers around. Okay, so let's just merge everything else that belongs together. So actually, let me start with Armature because I already started with that. So there's or the attacher, I mean. So this is part of the attacher, same as these. And I also want to pay attention that if I have linked meshes like here, that I'm not doubling over other meshes. So actually, before I do that, let me actually select all, and then I can look for the make single user object. So if I do that, I have to also make sure that I want to make every object and object data a single user. And now this will not happen, so they're not instances of each other anymore. Because what happens if you have instances, so let me just quickly show you. Let me just add a mesh here. Let me just duplicate it, and now I'll link them. So I make links of object data. So they're more or less instances right now. And if I'm not careful when merging, then what will happen is, let me just say I merge this to this, you'll see that it basically got duplicated because they're instances. So I want to be careful of this. So this is why I make everything a single user before I actually merge everything together. So let's just keep on merging stuff together, I'd say, right? So this is also part, this is also connected, and then there's also this here, and then everything basically is connected to this attacher. Nope, not rename, join. There's also the grease nipple. Alright, so this should be everything, so let's just, oh, there's still a grease nipple left. So if I should move this, there's still some stuff that I have left, or missed rather. So there's also part, and then also the centerpiece also needs to be. And what I can also do now is the hydraulic ram. I can also merge this together. Since only moving left and right, I don't need to pay attention to any pivots for this. So that is it for the attacher. So I can basically now merge everything else together because this is all going to move. Oh, actually, no, wait. These ones, I want to have them at some point maybe move independently, so I'm just going to hide these and then just select all of this and then just join this together. And now I'm just going to simply apply the location so that the pivot is at 0. And I've also got this mirror helper here that I don't no longer need, so I can just remove it. Alright, so this goes back to 0. And now we basically have set up everything. So I'm just going to rename. So this is the attacher and this is the mulcher. And I will call these now simply rubber flaps. So where's my rename tool? This is an add-on, by the way, this simple renaming panel. I can only really recommend to use this add-on because it is actually really good. So everything that is in here right now, I can also move back in, and I'm going to get the data name from object so that these data names here match with the object names. So everything is merged. So let's actually set up the materials right now. So I'll just simply start here and then check what kind of materials I have. So we can see that I have a couple of materials here, and I'm just going to quickly make myself a list. So custom material 0 is my orange, then custom material 1 is my black. Let's just make it metal as well. Then I need to have a custom material 3 that is, or rather 2 in my case, that is black plastic. And I also need for this, so let's make it metal, metal, metal. So let's make this one metal as well, but call it maybe dark red metal. And then we have number 3 is black plastic. And do I need anything else? I don't think so. Okay, so now I can actually select everything. And we can see here now that I have a whole bunch of different materials to choose. So let's just start. So I'm going to UV edit mode, switch back over to my list, and I can already see that I still have a couple of things here. This is because my mirror modifier had something mirrored to the other side, so I'm just going to quickly move this over. If I move this away, you can see that it's just double. And alright, let's deselect everything and just let's start select. So select everything that is painted metal orange. So I'm just going to simply select this, and then I'm going to use this giant pseudo material and move this down to color 0. And I can hide this. Next one is black metal, so everything that is black I'm going to select. I'm going to select here as well. This is color 1, hide. Then I have color brown, so I'm going to select this all. Select it as in here as well. Move to color 2. And then I had custom at 3 was black plastic. So I'm just simply going to select everything that is black plastic. Actually, now that I think of these ones here, I want them to be black plastic as well. So I'm just going to assign this to the plastic material. So let's just select everything again, like so. And move this over to custom mat 3 black plastic. And hide these. So now this one I can now hide as well because we did these. So now let's select everything that is rubber. So I'm going to select everything that is rubber, as you can see here. Select everything here and look for rubber, which is here. Can hide this. Now let's select everything that is chrome. Select this here as well. Look for chrome. Hide this. This is also scratched, so I can hide or select this as well. Silver scratched. Hide this one. This one actually I want it to be silver rough. Yes. So I want this all to be silver rough. So I'm going to select these and put them to silver rough. And then I only have these ones left, and this is just simply in my called black and white, but all this is nothing more than the reflector white, and these ones here are reflector red. So I'm going to hide this now, and if I'm going to this mode, we should have nothing else left, which we don't, which is a good sign. So I can once again select everything and see I have nothing in here in the UV01 space. So just a quick sip of coffee. And let's get back. So since I've got everything now set up, I can actually remove all materials because I don't need them anymore and I don't want them anymore. So what I can do now is simply select all, and then with the material utilities I can just simply remove all active material slots with all objects because I do not need them any longer. But what I do need is a simple material called lizard HL. No, it's GLM 300, and then I'm just calling it mat. And I want everything assigned, so I can just link everything to it, and now everything that I want to select should have this material. And it does. So now I'm going over to the decals, and the decals are set up already. Let me see. They do not have a shader source. We're going to fix that in a second. And there are the mulchers and those ones, or the washers, they already have that set up. So for the decals now, let's fix this. Or actually, let's do a first quick export. So since I want to export everything that is inside the mulcher collection, I will quickly simply select this, and in my export window I'm just going to make sure I have active collection ticked. And let's export it and let's see what the output is. And it exported, took about 2 seconds. So let's open it. And there we go. You can already see the decals themselves, they kinda exported, they do not have a shader, but they do work. So this is good news. Let's see how it is for my washers. They did export as well, so that is already looking pretty good. Alright, so let's close this up. Alright, let's fix the materials. So first of all, I'm going to select my decals, go to the shader source, and then we have to navigate to your install of Farming Simulator 2019 /data. I'm going to look for shaders and then the vehicle shader, which is down here. And you will see that it popped up a whole bunch of other variations, same as basically in the Giants editor. So now we're going to select decal here. And since these decals are using the same specular textures than the rest of the model, in my shading I'm going to set up so it exports the normals and the specular as well for this texture. So I'm going to drag and drop in my normal map, going to look for the normal map modifier, make sure that the color space is in non-color for this one, connect this here and connect the normal map, or the normal map node there. So this added the normals. I'm not 100% sure if I actually do need them, but I'm just making sure they have the same information of the normal surface than the rest. But what it definitely needs is the Speculum Map. So to export the Speculum Map, the current way to do it is to look out for a separate RGB map, and then simply connect the color to the image. And then you have to rename this here to gloss map. So the way you do it is in here, there's a small little tiny arrow right here. We have to click this and then go to name and name it gloss map, and also to make sure it works and to have it visible, the label itself you have to rename to gloss map. This is what I always suggest. So if we export this now, so export it again. So I see it work again, 2.2 seconds. So let's open it again and check. We should see that the decals themselves, if we just quickly get on here, yes, they are dirty. They have everything assigned, so the gloss map, the normal map, and if I open, they have assigned the shader with the correct variation. So next one I want to do is my main material. So here again, you can actually drop and drag back in the specular normal maps, and we basically do the same that we did before. So We need a separate RGB node for the Speculum Map. Oh, connect. Please connect. Hello. And then rename this again to Gloss Map. And this a normal map. So now in the material window, for the shader source, we want to once again go into our shaders and look for the vehicle shader, since this is going to have different color materials. So now I'm going to go for color mask, and then I'm going to add some of the materials or the color mats right here. So I'm quickly having my second window open so that I can see some values. So obviously this is the first one, so this is 0.66 for my first color. Then we have 0.193 for the second color, and then we have 0.003 for the first color as well. So this is RGB, and then we want it to be metal, so this is 0, and these ones are 0 as well. So color mat 1, let's just check, is the black metal. So we're going to put this down to 0.05 for all three so that it's black. And then we have a dark red metal. So let's make this let's just make this like 0.5 and then 0.1 and 0.1. The next one is color mat 3 is a black plastic. So you have to kind of imagine it right here. So black plastic, again, let's just make it 0.05 for all three. And then a nice plastic material, and the UDIM is 32 because that is shiny plastic as far as I remember. So now we have to set up this here, so the shader settings, so the colors should export and should be set up. So let's export this again, and this now a full back and forth now to just simply check if everything is going on correctly. And we can see here that everything looks alright. Just quickly add a light, and yeah, colors aren't perfect, but they'll do. So I'm going to fix this now as well quickly so that there's no more Z fighting on these ones. So I'm just going to quickly select these, and then in my modeling there's the shrink and flatten. I'm just going to push them out a tiny bit, like so. Right, they're still broken for whatever reason. Seems like I never actually remapped them, so let's actually do it now. This is looking interesting. Oh yeah, this is looking weird because there's the normal map right here. Actually, no, I'm actually doing this wrong. This does not need to have a normal map because the normal map is not displayed on the second UV map, so on this one. So actually let me remove it because this was wrong and people are already yelling at me, I guess. So the normal map can go away. But let's fix these two because this is something that I have to fix. So let's go to UV editing, look up my texture, and then make sure that we're in the correct UV map, which we are, and let's just quickly remap both of these. And I know that these are the 1000 PTO RPM. So let's just put it here. So this is a bit awkward now because there is a bit of stretching that we will fix. And let's call it done. Good. So decals fixed. Texture export worked. Actually, let's add a sunlight here because lights will also export. So if you're doing a lot of back and forth and you don't always want to add a light, I suggest adding a light here in Blender because the sunlight will simply export to this type of light right here, which is also basically a directional sunlight. So now we have set up basically everything that we need to set up for the model itself. We can set up a couple of clip distances, or we could actually set up a merge group right now. So let's do this. So I want this to be the root of my merge group, so I'm just going to call this Armature Wiz. It's also a merge group, and this is also part of the merge group. So same here, this is going to be my decals viz. This is my root, and this is the rest. So if I export everything now, I should have the merge group set up. So let's just quickly check. And yeah, you can see here. Oh, that is because the scale is broken. So we will check that in a second. You can see here that this is working fine. There's a little bit something odd going on. Oh no, that's because this is not part of the Armature. I forgot to add the rest, like the drum and this, I forgot to add to the merge group. So let's quickly fix this before we take a look at the decals. So this is also part of not decals viz, but Armature viz. And something else that needs to move. No, this is going to be hidden, so this cannot be part of the merge group. And anything else? I don't think so. So let's check the decals. Nothing wrong in here. I wonder why this is not working. So let's just simply export this once again to see what's going on. And the decals are still broken. There's probably an issue with the merge groups, which we will investigate in a second. But I think everything here should now accordingly. I forgot to add the rubber flaps, obviously, because I'm a dum-dum. So let's fix this. So let's quickly select these, and I can show you a quicker way on how to actually add a name to the merge groups. So you can simply add them to one, right click the value, and then copy to selected. And I think this is not working because there's an issue with merge groups and decals. So let's remove this for now. Reload. You see the decals are back in order. Something that I have to investigate further and talk about with Stjernes, but we will see what that is. It's probably just a bug with a shader or something else, but we'll check later on. So the merge group is set up now, so if I go to the back drum and rotate, that should rotate still fine, and yes it does. Same as this big one. If I rotate this, that should also rotate. So this is all working perfectly fine. Alright, so merge groups are set up. And now let's actually take a look on how to construct the scene. So usually what I do is I have some hoses still here that I don't need, so do not worry about these. We will come to these later on. But I want to actually set up the scene that I need. So if you remember, most of the models have a basic setup, so they have a basic set of transform groups that they start with. So let's do this as well. So the first thing they always have in common is a component. So let's set up our main component, which I will simply add here on top of my attacher, because I want this to be my main component. So I want this to be in center right here. It's a bit hard to set up. There we go. And maybe do it like this. Alright. And now I'm going to call this my lizard HGLM 300 main component 1. Also make sure that this name here is the same as here, just to be sure, because it can be kind of confusing, so you can rename it simply by double clicking. And since this is my main compound, I want to go here down below into the object data properties, and down here you can see first of all I want this to be non-renderable, and then in the oh yeah, here in the object properties themselves you have the rigid body type, so I want this to be my dynamic compound, the collision mask of 2002. And now I want everything to be a child of this, so you can simply select this and now add this with parent. So parent everything to it. You'll see it will stay inside its own collections, but it will be instanced down here. It is a bit rough to see in my opinion, so what I usually do is I simply add everything to a single collection to make it easier to export. So I will actually get rid of the sun now to make it a lot easier and put everything under the mulcher. And everything here will also go into the mulcher, everything here will be mulcher, and everything here will also be mulcher. And now I can actually start sorting. So what do I want to go where? Obviously, I have these two big main components. So I have the attacher and the mulcher. So everything that is movable, so everything that needs to follow here needs to be parented to the mulcher itself. So the decals, the rubber flaps, all of them, the warning signs, not the washer mulcher because this is not I need, but the drum, back drum, they need all to be a child of the mulcher. And then I have the attacher decals and the washers of the attacher, and they will be a parent or child of the attacher. So I can actually check this now again. So if I move this about without snapping, obviously everything should move with it, which it does. Good. So you could export this right now. It would look kind of weird because you do not have these empty transform groups to sort them. And empty transform groups are nothing more than simple empties in Blender. So you can simply add in plain X is empty. And this is everything you need. So let's just start with the basics that we all know. So we have an AI, we have an attachable, we have an effects, we have a skin meshes usually, and we have visuals, and several more that I usually don't remember, but they will come back afterwards. Oh yeah, so we obviously have a drop area. So we call it drop area, please. We have a work area. And we have wheels. We also have, and obviously we have a work area start, work area end, width, and same with the drop area. So we have drop area start, end, and width. Not end, it's called height. I always call it end, but it's called height. I just had to check again on the other file that I still have open, so I'm not doing anything that is dum-dum. And I also need my ground reference node. So ground reference node. So my work area, I can parent it to my work area, my drop area to my drop area. And then I also need my attacher joints. So I can add these to the attachable. So let's call that attacher joint back, because we can attach it on the back and on the front. Attacher joint rear, and not rear because we have back already. So let's call it front, of course. And we'll later have our connection hoses, but I'm not going to worry about these right now. So the work area obviously moves with my mulcher. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually parent this here. First of all, I'm simply going to select all of these and move them into the mulcher collection. So the drop area is also going to move with the mulcher, and as you can see here, it's already starting to build up some sort of hierarchy that you know of Giants Editor. So the effects, they can stay with the attacher, the attachable as well with the attacher, as well as the AI, which we do not really need right now. Or actually, no, they do not need to be with the attacher. This can all stay with the main component, which I need to unhide to actually be able to parent anything to it. There we go. So we have some visuals that we will put down into actually the mulcher as well, because I want the mulcher and attacher. Well, actually, I do not really need this. Let's call this moving meshes and parent this to the mulcher, so we can clear up some of the things we do not want to see here. So the rubber flaps, they are a moving mesh later on, as well as the drum and the back drum. So we have already added quite a few of different objects here and empty. So let's do a test export, because we can already check then again if my i3D object attributes are also working. So let's see, I'm going to export this as well. I want to collapse the armatures, and I want to do the active collection, yes. So it took 2.5 seconds. So let's reload. You can see that there we go, there's my main component, and everything in here is properly set up as well. So there's my mulcher, and if I move this, oh yeah, true, I cannot have, true, why am I doing this? I cannot have something being a child of skin mesh as far as I know, so I'm simply going to remove this, and I can also remove this. So if I export this back now once again, it should work. So there's my mulcher here, and yes, this works again. I'm still no expert, so I'm still learning by doing slightly. So yeah. So we have the mulcher here, there's my work area, drop area. And the thing you have to pay attention in this is that it is sorting everything alphabetically, which is a thing Blender does. You cannot turn it off as far as I know. So you have to work with it. So actually I want another that I call visuals, because there's a couple of meshes that can be hidden because I do not need them any longer in the mulcher. Or actually, it's just the warning signs and the washers. Let's just do it like this, because they need to go anyway. I've also got wheels, and if I remember correctly, my moving mesh drum is going to be a wheel later, so we'll move this here, and now I can actually start setting up my nodes. So let's start with the work area. So let's move the work area height is the side, so this goes over here. My start is right here. Let me just quickly verify, not that I'm doing anything dumb, that I already did, because the width goes here, not the height. The height goes back here where the start is, but it needs to go actually this way. So I can actually select all of these, move them up front, so kind of up until around about here, and move my work area to here. Let's actually do its center. And there's a little error that I'm going to fix by quickly resharpen. So there was a normal error, which I can simply fix by applying the hard ops sharpen again. Good, so next thing is my drop area. So my drop area height start. So start and height goes both over here again, same as the work area, but my height goes slightly below and my width goes to the other side. So right around here. Alright, so I have my work area set up, I have my job area set up. Now let's actually set up the attacher because I have to use these ones as well later on. So, and my attachable, I first of all need an another node that is called top reference point back and top reference point front. So now there's a little bit of pivot rotation things that you have to be cautious about, because Blender uses a different system of where Z points. You have to also pay attention on how you set up your pivots, because they're not in the same rotation as they are in Maya. So let's set up the rear one. So the rear is this one where my tractor is kind of like here. So this would be the rear attacher and this would be for the front attacher. So let's take my attacher joint back and make sure that we are in the correct rotation. And to do this, one tip is that I can give you is go here to the local rotation, because this will always show you the actual rotation of the empty. So if I kind of rotate it into a weird angle, you can see that it follows that angle. Alright, so I want, first of all, you can see that this is slightly skewed. We have to fix that later, but let's fix this one as well. So this is my rear attachment. So if I look from the side, it needs to go in here and then here, so that it's in center and also in line with these. And my top reference node back needs to go up here. So it needs to go here and here. So since the top reference point needs to be a child of the attacher, or not needs, but it's kind of good to have it that way, I will simply parent that back, and I will do the same with the other. So, oh, that was wrong one. So this needs to go here. And then the front attacher will do the same there, so it needs to be right here. And then the top reference point is right around here. So let's parent this. Now, the rotation, because we haven't rotated it yet. The rotation is not so important for the top reference node, but it is for the attacher node. What I can give you as an advice is a 90-degree rotation. So let's actually unparent this again. So I'm going to click this one now, and I will rotate this 90 degrees to X or minus 90 on Z. This is the correct way. So minus 90 on Z, which will mean later that the exporter will rotate it 90 degrees plus in Y. So this will later be like this because Z has to point to the front. But since Blender isn't working that way, we have to keep in mind that this is the way we need to handle it. So we're actually going to do the same for this one. So the front attacher same needs to look to this side. So we have to rotate this one 90 degree plus because it's in the different or in the opposite direction. So now we can actually parent these ones back, and let's do a test export to see if I'm talking bullshit or if I'm right on this one. So let's see. So there's my attacher and there's my attacher joined back, my joint front, and you see that they are rotated. So if we compare this now, I can actually show you the example for this. So this is my attacher joined back. So see how Z is pointing up. If we now go into our Giants editor and select at the back, you can see that it is actually rotated 90 degrees. Y is pointing upwards and Z is pointing to the side. So it did rotate 90 degrees in this direction. I said earlier that Z needs to be forward, but I did check again and that is not the case. Actually, Z needs to point to the side of it. Alright, so since we've set up all of these now, we can go back, and I want to set up my collisions right now, since there's something that I forgot as well. So let's take this empty and call it collisions. And I'm actually going to do only a single collision mesh. So let's add a box and simply set up a very simple collision mesh. Or actually, I'm probably going to do two. So I'm going to do one like this, and then one for this box here. So right around here, and the other one, let's do it right around this here. And this I want to be on level Z so that it's completely level. And I'm going to call this now Collider Mulcher. And I'm simply going to add another mesh that I'm going to put here. Just eyeballing it now. There we go. I'm calling this Collider Gearbox. So these have to be a rigid body type as well, but they have to be a compound child because we already have the main component, which is our compound. So if I select this here, you can see that this is a dynamic compound collider, and this one, or those two, obviously they need to be a compound child that also are a collider. So we'll select compound child, make sure the collision is enabled, and add the collision mask of 2002. Now I am going to parent them into the collision. And now I can also start actually selecting what I want to be exported to my XML later on. So obviously, in my visuals, I want the warning signs to be added to my 3D mapping. I want my ground reference node, and obviously the work areas, they need to be in there as well. I need this drum because I want to animate it later. Actually, this is not my wheel. So that is wrong because this is going to be animated later, but this one is just a wheel that is going to move. So this one is added to i3D mapping. Then this also is going to be added. Then my drop areas, let's make this a little bit quicker. So again, select one, click, and click copy to selected. I do not need my colliders, but I do want my mulcher later on to be part of the i3D mapping, simply because then I can do a moving tools with that and actually move it. So before I do anything else, I will simply select my XML file here. I have a very simple one set up from an older tutorial, and we'll just use this to show how it's overwritten. So in my attachable, I obviously also need the top reference points added to the i3D mapping. Alright, so I want this one as well. So let's export this one again to see how it looks, and let's take a look if it overwrites our XML. And you can see that yes, it does. Everything that you just selected to be part of the i3D mapping, it will simply add, and you have the correct nodes right here. So let's check inside Giants. Hold the file open. And I forgot to make them non-renderable, so let's quickly go back and make them non-renderable. So this is non-renderable and this is non-renderable. Let's export again, and I can actually do this right here. Alright, so this is done. We have these. We have this is set up. There's an effects that I probably don't need, but I will just keep it on here later. We have my collision meshes. We have my drop areas. We have the moving meshes that we will later animate. And I have the things that if I want to hide, I can simply hide. So we have set up most of the important things now, which you could already check out in game. The only thing that we did not set up yet are my skin meshes and a couple of other things like yeah, lights. So to add lights to this, for example, is fairly easy. Since it's only nothing more than a reference point, all we need is another empty. So I will simply add an empty, make sure that I'm in local again, because this is also rotated in a very specific way, because it's pointing in a certain direction. We have to make sure that it also is doing that in our Blender file. So the lights of my mesh are somewhere on these warning lights if they're selected. So let me just quickly see if I can. There we go. There's one, and here's another one, and they obviously have to go in center here and somewhere there. It's fine. And I will call this just simply light left. Let me check if that is the front or the rear light. That is the front light? No, yes, no, rear light. So, because it's pointing to the rear. So the other one is light left front. Because they are moving and should be hidden with the warning signs, I will simply add another empty that I will call lights and parent them to the warning signs, so that when I later hide them, I only need to hide the warning signs and the lights themselves are also hidden with it. So like these. Well, actually, I need to add these, of course, to the mapping as well. And then I'm simply going to duplicate it and make sure that I move them here as well, and then rename light right. Actually, I'm pretty dumb. That is the left. That is the right. So let's fix this quickly. So that's right. And here we only need to remove this, and everything should be added to the D3 mapping, which it is. Let's do lights as well, because why not? And now for the rotation part. So the ones that are showing to the front, the Z of them should point to the front. So I have selected this right here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rotate them 90 degrees this way. Actually, no, not this way, but 180 degrees this way. And then 90 degrees that way. So that the Z is pointing forwards and Y is pointing upwards. And then we will do the same on the other side. So this is the front as well. So rotate 180 degrees and then rotate another 90 so that Z is facing front. And then on the back ones, so that the ones that point to the rear, we basically, let me just check if I did not fuck this up, because this is also a possibility. And I did fuck it up. So the ones that, oh no, actually I did not fuck that up. That was actually correct. So they always have to point away from, or they actually have to point in the direction that you want them to shine. So this one is also going 180 degrees. And then 90 degrees. Nope. Yeah, this is a bit puzzly, so you have to kinda, oh, that's actually the correct one. And, oh yeah, these ones. So all you need to do for these is just rotate them like this so that they're facing front. So that was a lot easier, only 90 degrees rotation. So to make it easier to check, we can simply select these and under options go to transform origins, and then you can see where Z is pointing. So we want Z pointing away, we want Y pointing up, and X to the sides. So this is what we want for the lights. I can also show you with the attacher what I mean. See how Y is pointing to the sides, so always to the right, and Z is pointing always up. Good. So, anything else that I need to add? I don't think so. Oh well, I'll need to add, actually for the wheels, I need to add another empty that will be my axis. So we'll simply call this wheels electron 1. Parent this, and this needs to be in the center here, which I'm simply going with the align tools that are inside of Blender, and I'm going to align my location so that they're in center. Good. Now, for the most important and hated part, skin meshes. Before we do that, let's simply make another export, so unhide everything. These ones, I said in an earlier tutorial that they do need a material, and that is not true. You do not need to assign them a material. If collision meshes do not have one, the exporter will auto-assign them a material, which is simply called i3d default material, so you don't need to add any materials to these. Alright, good. So let's just check everything, that everything is looking alright. So we have the attachers where Z is pointing away. Let's check with the lights. So we have visuals, warning signs, and we have my lights that are also pointing away with Z. They're rotated 90 degrees, so don't worry, or 180, so they're upside down for me on this one. And then we have my wheels, so we have my wheels of one background, which is my axis right here. And I can actually see there's one missing. Oh yeah, because it is a child of another one, so I will simply oh yeah, all of these, since they're movable, they will not export, so I can get rid of the merge group right for these ones. So this one, merge groups, is right here, so let's get rid of the merge groups for these, for this one as well. And then obviously for these ones, at some point I want them to be movable, maybe. Oops. There we go. Ah, that didn't work. Seems like we have to delete this manually. So simply select all of them and get rid of the merge groups. Alright, let's export this again. So make sure that all collision meshes are here and export. And everything is back as it's supposed to be. Good, so let's get working on the very annoying, very irritating skin meshes. And there's a bit of a preamble for these, so bear with me. So here's now a quick example file of what I meant earlier with Blender working differently than other 3D modeling softwares. So this is a very simple and badly looking cultivator, which is actually a prototype for a mobile game I'm doing. But nevertheless, you can see that there's a lot of bones right here and there's a lot of tines. So what I did here is every tine is skin weighted to a bone, as you can see here. So I can select a bone and then simply export this. So this is just a single armature, and this works great. So Blender can actually do that. That is no problem. You could export these, no issue whatsoever. The problem though is if some parts of this object would want to move separately, and if that object also has more childs. Because the issue is, while this works, and you could simply, let's say, parent this part to the root, what you can't do is you cannot parent something to a bone, and this is an issue that I can show right here. So this is just a very basic and ugly setup of the mulcher I have, right? So what happens here is that there is just a single armature with two bones. So this here is, I'm just gonna call this my root bone, and this one my armature bone, or my mulcher bone rather. So if I go now into edit mode, I can move this about, and this is now important for the connection hoses, so bear with me. So this one would move, And now the issue is, how do I actually make the body of the mulcher move with the bone? So some might think, well, you could weight everything to the bone, and that's not easy and also not very practical. If you come from Maya, you would say, well, just parent it to the bone, but that's not possible in Blender. And this is the issue we were having right before, because this bone needs to move with the mulcher, or everything that is part of the mulcher itself needs to move with the bone, because it's all in one armature. So the solution for this would be simply two armatures. So you can see that I basically duplicated it, but I have a single armature with a single bone for the mulcher, and a single bone with a single armature for the root. And now since it's an armature, you can actually parent stuff to it. So I can select this part here and this here and simply parent it object-wise. So you can see that this is now parented to the bone, and it also works vice versa. So you could parent the bone to the mulcher, and you could parent the root to the attacher. So now if you move the visual mesh of the mulcher, it also moves the bone and the armature, or it moves both the armature and the bone with the visual mesh. And this is not really working in this example where you have just a single armature, because you can't really parent anything to it, because it would simply move with the whole armature. So if I parent the single armature with the two bones to this here, if I move it, the whole armature with the two bones moves. So this is pretty unpractical. I mean, you could say that, well, you could just set it up like this and rearrange everything later, but I think that's a big hassle if you always have to remember to rearrange the bones afterwards, or in Giants Editor. And we had the goal that everything you can do in Blender, you should do in Blender. So we came up with the idea of using two armatures to actually achieve that. So here's now a quick example file of what I meant earlier with Blender working differently than other 3D modeling softwares. So this is a very simple and badly looking cultivator, which is actually a prototype for a mobile game I'm doing. But nevertheless, you can see that there's a lot of bones right here and there's a lot of tines. So what I did here is every tine is skin weighted to a bone, as you can see here. So I can select a bone and then simply export this. So this is just a single armature, and this works great. So Blender can actually do that. That is no problem. You could export these, no issue whatsoever. The problem though is if some parts of this object would want to move separately, and if that object also has more childs. Because the issue is, while this works, and you could simply, let's say, parent this part to the root, what you can't do is you cannot parent something to a bone, and this is an issue that I can show right here. So this is just a very basic and ugly setup of the mulcher I have, right? So what happens here is that there is just a single armature with two bones. So this here is, I'm just gonna call this my root bone, and this one my armature bone, or my mulcher bone rather. So if I go now into edit mode, I can move this about, and this is now important for the connection hoses, so bear with me. So this one would move, and now the issue is, how do I actually make the body of the mulcher move with the bone? So some might think, well, you could weight everything to the bone, and that's not easy and also not very practical. If you come from Maya, you would say, well, just parent it to the bone, but that's not possible in Blender. And this is the issue we were having right before, because this bone needs to move with the mulcher, or everything that is part of the mulcher itself needs to move with the bone, because it's all in one armature. So the solution for this would be simply two armatures. So you can see that I basically duplicated it, but I have a single armature with a single bone for the mulcher, and a single bone with a single armature for the root. And now since it's an armature, you can actually parent stuff to it. So I can select this part here and this here and simply parent it object-wise. So you can see that this is now parented to the bone, and it also works vice versa. So you could parent the bone to the mulcher, and you could parent the root to the attacher. So now if you move the visual mesh of the mulcher, it also moves the bone and the armature, or it moves both the armature and the bone with the visual mesh. And this is not really working in this example where you have just a single armature, because you can't really parent anything to it, because it would simply move with the whole armature. So if I parent the single armature with the two bones to this here, if I move it, the whole armature with the two bones moves. So this is pretty unpractical. I mean, you could say that, well, you could just set it up like this and rearrange everything later, but I think that's a big hassle if you always have to remember to rearrange the bones afterwards or in Giants Editor. And we had the goal that everything you can do in Blender, you should do in Blender. So we came up with the idea of using two armatures to actually achieve that. So back into our file with our mulcher. I have selected all my hoses right now, and what I want to do is I want to quickly do the UV mapping. So since it's not anything special, I will simply move them down here, and then I will move all over to the rubber. And they obviously also need their own materials, so once again I will simply cleanse them all from the materials, so like this, so that they all have their own material, or one material, and I will simply call this Lizard HGLM 300 hoses. Also simply link all the materials, and don't forget down here to go to your shader source and go to your shaders, look for the vehicle shader, and make sure it's color mask. So we'll move this now into here so that it's part of this right here. And let's do a test export. So I simply want to check if everything that I just exported is fine. So let's see. I exported it again. Let's open it. And I should have a whole load of different hoses right here that have a material. Oh well, I might have misclicked there because they're somewhat metallic. Oh yeah, I forgot to add the correct materials, or not materials but textures. So let's fix that. So simply select a mesh that has this material. So I have selected a hose here. Going over to shading, going to look for the image texture node, and I think I should already have it in here, which I do not. So let's look for the textures, and that texture is usually in your Farming Simulator 19 data, then it's in shared, connection hoses, and then it's in, not here, I'm wrong. It's in is it in assets? Where is it? Oh yeah, it's down here. It's hoses. So it's hoses normal. And then we need another one that is in the same, which is hoses specular. So again, let's set up the texture export. Don't worry that it's going to look somewhat off here in Blender, because this DDS is saved in a very different format. It might look very weird in Blender, but don't worry, it's going to look absolutely fine if we export that later into the Giants editor. Alright, so let's test that export again. Reload, and now they should no longer be metal. There we go. Let's do some light, and you see they're rubber. So that worked well. Right, now we have to skin them, and this is a long process, but I'm going to show it to you nevertheless. So you can see actually here I kind of fucked up. There's a mesh lying on top of it, so let's check that out, what that is. This might be from earlier when I said that there is some sort of there's the linked meshes, and you can see that yes, indeed they are linked. Let's see if that's the same here. Yes, it is. So let's see if I can simply delete some faces like this, and that should have done the trick. Good. Alright, so skinning these. As I said earlier, for this it's best to actually have two armatures. So I will add two armatures. So first I want to add one that I just become a root armature. And this one will be a child of my attacher. So I'm going to call this root bone. And then I'm going to my attacher, and I'm going to attach this to, no, not attach. I want to actually parent this down here. So I want to parent so that my bone is moving with this as well. So I'm actually going to move my armature into a bit more of a more center position for the whole mesh. Alright, so this is my root armature, and then I'm going to add a second one. I can simply duplicate this, and this is going to be my mulcher armature. So with my mulcher bone. Alright, before I forget what I will do with this one, the root armatures, I will simply rotate it 90 degrees so that's not in the way of anything. It doesn't really affect since we're going to translate this thing only, so the mulcher. So I am simply going to move this down to 0, 0, 0. Or rather, yeah, we can just leave it here. It doesn't really matter. Position of this doesn't really matter, but I will simply bring this into the center line of the mulcher itself, just to make it a little bit visually appealing. Even the center line of the gearbox, so like this. So, and since this armature is going to be moving with the mulcher, I'm going to parent it here. So if I move the mulcher now, the armature will move as well, as you can see. And now the big moving will begin. So I have a couple of cables here that are part of the warning signs. So I will simply add them like this. So they're a warning sign. Let's call them warning signs cables. And they need to be child of the warning signs so that they get hidden with the warning signs as well. So they can actually go into the top collection. And then we have a couple of different ones. So let's start from the top. So we have a cable here, and we have two hydraulic hoses here. So I'm going to merge these and call them hydraulic hose. And then as you can see, they're detached. So they're hydraulic hose detached, and the other one is electric cable detached. Good. So these need to be weighted as well. Even though they're detached, what could potentially happen is that you detach the mulcher while your mulcher is kind of like this. So you have moved it to one side. So this is why these hoses need to be detached as well. Or not detached, but they need to be skinned as well. So what I will do is, once again, I will simply parent them with an empty group, and then again I will parent them with an empty group right here, and then I will clear the parents so that I have the armature for the mulcher. So I'm just going to call this armature modifier mulcher and this armature modifier root. And as in the preview tutorial, I will have to select the corresponding vertex or vertex groups right here, since this is adding as a mask because two armatures of or two armature modifiers, because of two armatures in the scene, they don't mix. So we have to mask it with this. So whatever is inside this vertex group is only influencing this armature modifier. So now basically you have to imagine this as a simple black and white mask. And now there's the easy part again of actually weighting them. Well, it's not so easy, it's more like a tedious task, but nothing too worrisome nevertheless. So I'm just going to select them somewhere around here. Going over to my vertex groups window. And now this is my root bone and this is my mulcher bone. So what I have now is moving with the root bone. So let's give this a weight of 1, but the mulcher bone a weight of 0. And then I'm going to invert my selection and do it vice versa. So everything that's here is going to move with the mulcher. So this is getting a vertex weight of 1, while it gets a vertex weight of 0 for the root bone. We can actually check this now if we go into vertex paint and look at it like this, and to actually see if it works, we can select any armature and go into pose modifier or pose mode and just move, and it should look like this. And now all we have left to do is actually smooth it out a bit. So we can go back into the vertex paint mode, and in weights you have a smooth, and that actually works pretty good. So you can really smooth it out. So let's actually do kind of like 120 smooth iterations. That looks fairly good. There's going to be some clipping here that are already fixed in my main file, but for this demonstration I am simply going to show you the ropes of how to weight. So let's go again in pose mode, and now there's a nifty trick. So you can actually see that this is moving already. There's a bit of banding and a bit of clipping. And I know that's only going to move about 22 centimeters in each direction. So we can go from -22 to +22, and this already looks pretty good. So let's do this for the other ones as well. So I'm actually going to make a cut now after I'm going to do, so actually I'm going to do this electrical cable again, and I'm going to cut away and come back when I'm done. Alright, so let's do this once again. So I have this electric cable right here, same deal, parent with empty group, parent with empty group, make sure that I have two vertex groups, remove my parent, and then this is my root, and this is my mulcher. The list, or the what's it called? The place in the modifier array or modifier list doesn't matter. So mulcher can be on top or on the bottom. It doesn't matter because it is masked with this input anyway, so it can be any point. Doesn't really matter. So let's do the weighting trick once again. So right here, so let's do it kind of like right here. So go into my root bone, this is a 1, this is a 0, and vice versa, this is a 1, and this is a 0. So let's check. That looks good. Smooth it out. That can actually be a little bit more. Let's do 160 iterations, maybe 180, something like this. Go to the other vertex group and do the same again there. And then we can check again. So go into pose mode, select the bone, and then we can see that this is moving accordingly. Alright, now we can actually do a quick export test. So, because we have an armature or a bone inside an armature, so if we take a look at this mulcher here, there's a mulcher bone right here and a mulcher armature right here. If we export it as is, there's a little toggle here that I already explained in my very quick look video. This is collapse armatures, which means that it will not create an armature or transform group for the armature. It will simply export the bone as a single object. So usually you want this enabled. So we will simply export it. And export it with 2.7 seconds. So let's take a look inside Giants. Let's go closer. Let's quickly create a light so we can see what is going on right here. So it should be on this side. So you can see here, this is one of the bones we just weighted or hoses. So let's go to our attacher, and if we move the attacher now, you can see that the bones themselves or the hoses themselves are also moving with it accordingly. There's a little bit weird going on right here, but as a presentation, I think that is more than... Actually, that is not. That is because there's another mesh on top of that. So, let's see the other side. Let's see this, how this behaves if we move it. Oh, that's a lot. I don't want to move it that far. So we can see that this is moving fine. Alright, so I will come back when this is all done. Alright, so I'm back. I have now weighted all the electrical and hydraulic hoses and cables to this bone right here. So we can actually check it out right now. So I'm going to pose mode and I'm going to move everything. And you can see that this is all moving. There's a bit of weird things going on right here and right there, but in general, not a big of an issue. So now I can even go into my attacher or wherever I want. I can actually let me do one so that they're easily accessible. First of all, don't forget to put those into they have to be in mapping. So I'm actually going to copy this to all selected though, so they show up in the XML file. And I am going to make a new empty that I'm going to call connection hoses. And I'm going to parent this to here. And all of these now are going into the mulcher scene collection and into the connection hoses. I'm simply going to parent them so that they're all here. Right, so now I can actually remove all these collections that I don't need anymore. No, not like this. Remove, not paste. And now I have everything in my file. So now I'm simply going to export it once again into i3D. Everything like this, it can stay simply. And I have two open that I'm actually going to reload one. There's still the mulcher here. That is because I forgot to actually do something else. So this is active collection. If it still exports the active collection for you, simply always select your main component, and when you go to export you can do active object and that will export everything. Same with selected objects below here because it is parented. So if we go to selected objects, I export it, it will export everything up top from there on. Right, so let's just zoom in on here, create another light, and then for my attacher, actually let's simply select the mulcher and then move it. You can see that all the hoses are moving and everything is working as intended. So I'm going to stop this here because the rest would simply be add more empties, add more things to the XML mapping, and then just going back and forth from here on. So this is just a very quick tutorial on how to use the exporter and how to set up everything up. Everything that needs to be transform group, use empties because that's the easiest way. If there are any issues where you have to quickly export only something to test it, for example, if you have to export an empty to check how it works, all you need to do is go into Blender, select the empty, and if you have selected objects on, it will only export this one and everything that is below. So you can see that I selected the right front, so it will export only this, and it also works with everything that is below. So I select the mulcher, so it will only export the mulcher and everything that is below that point in Blender, so everything that's childed to it or parented to it. So there we go. That's just how you set up in Blender, and if your file is complete later on, it will kind of look like this. So this is my main file where everything is set up correctly as it is. So you can see that I have my main component here, same as we did before. I have another collision mesh here. I have a visual right here. I also have only 2 bones that are only parented to those parts. So there's an attacher armature on top here, and then I have my root armature. So I actually did it the other way around in my test file. And if you export everything to the standards, so how you can use it, your file's basically looking like this. So this is my finished file. This is how it's currently working and looking in Giants. So everything is set up. I have my visual meshes, so I can move these. Everything moves. Everything looks good. I have some empty transform groups that I'm going to remove later on. I have the connection hoses here with some dummies that are for the XML mapping. So this is where a connector would be loaded as a prefab from the data folder. And yeah, so this is how you set it up basically. So here's my root bone actually. So this is for the skin meshes. My decals here, I have some collisions and colliders here. Here's my PTO node, so this is my PTO detach node. And here's my input node. So yeah, this is how you set up in Blender, how you export it with the i3D exporter. And if you have any questions, it is best to go into the Vertex Design Discord. I will leave a link below in the description and ask me there, because I usually see that a lot quicker than on YouTube, because YouTube and showing you comments is a bit iffy lately. So be sure to check out the Discord and also the GitHub page if you have any issues or want to download the latest version. So thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.